comes about 15 minutes of my favorite time of the week. I talked to Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor. Byron, I'm going to say a word and just have you respond. Harvard.
Well, the first response was laughter. Well, what can I... Out of touch.
That's charitable. That's very charitable. I went on Hannity's show last night with Sean, and I said, not only are they going to lose this lawsuit, which Dershowitz agreed with me, so that's always comforting, but they're not going to get the money back, and they ought to lose their tax-exempt status. And I may have stunned people. I'm just had it. It's my alma mater. I love the place. But they're so deep in their own stuff, Byron. Do they not see how they look to people?
No, I don't think they do. Well, they don't call it an ivory tower for nothing. They are somewhat isolated, and they are somewhat out of touch. On the other hand, they're extremely wealthy. What is their, is it
$53 billion?
Their endowment? $53 billion is their endowment. So with the income of that and $53 billion, I mean, they could operate. What's their annual budget?
I have no idea.
I have no idea either, but they could probably get along for a while. And, I mean, they're so rich that I think it's been common to refer to them at times as a hedge fund with a university attached.
Yep.
So why can't they keep doing that? And the other thing, I have one question for you. Maybe you know the answer. As part of their PR response in this whole battle with the Trump administration, Harvard has emphasized, as a matter of fact, emphasized to the exclusion of everything else, the research it does in medicine and science. Okay, so we do all this really valuable stuff, and you really don't want to stop funding that because we're saving lives and making a better future. Is that all they do? Don't they have like a humanities department, and don't they have a social sciences, and don't they have lots of things that do?
They got a
really
department. They got a school
stuff?
of education. They got a school of public policy. They got a school of health. They got all sorts of schools. It's a gigantinormous place.
And they are acting as if they are a medical research institution that the Trump administration is strangling, when in fact they are a heavily politicized educational institution.
And I don't think there's an answer to that, nor is there an answer to the very simple question, if you're doing all this medical research and you were segregated, would that be okay? Because that's their argument, basically, is we are above and beyond the civil rights laws of the United States. You must give us our money because we're doing important research. And I actually haven't heard that argument since 1984, when I joined the Department of Justice in the aftermath of the Bob Jones decision coming down. And Bob Jones is this little Southern school that was segregationist, and then it got out of segregation, but they still banned interracial dating, and they lost their tax-exempt status. And it shattered the Reagan DOJ because a lot of people thought they had the religious right to be that wrong, and other people said, no, they don't. And the Supreme Court agreed, no, they don't. Has anyone brought up the Bob Jones case? You don't get to violate the civil rights laws of the United States and be a tax-exempt institution.
Yeah, I believe you and I actually talked about Bob Jones last week, as a matter of fact, because I believe the IRS, kind of similar to this, the IRS withdrew their tax-exempt status, and then they sued, and it got to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court sides with the IRS, so it's pretty clear what was going on, and it happened in a way roughly similar, at least chronologically, in the sense that the administration, or in this case the IRS, takes away their tax-exempt status. They throw a fit, go to the court, and lose. The
sequence is the same. And Professor Dershowitz said they're going to lose this case, and I think they're going to lose it. But I added on, and I may have repeated myself with this last week, but they sued on Monday. It was last week's story. It was going to play itself out in negotiations, and Harvard was going to get straight. They were going to actually toe the line. And I went back and I began to research. President Garber sent out this letter on March 31st to the university called Our Resolve, rather pompously titled Our Resolve. Yes. And they admitted all this anti-Semitism. But what wasn't admitted to, and I don't see much coverage of, they just lost in June of 2023 a Supreme Court case They lost it 6-3. They've been violating the Equal Protection Clause in the Civil Rights Act of 1964 for years and years to the detriment of Asian Americans. And the Supreme Court, I'm quoting from the Chief Justice here, the university's main response to these criticisms is essentially, trust us. Well, I don't trust him. Do you trust him, Byron, to get right?
No. As a matter of fact, on the anti-Semitism part, wasn't part of his letter saying that, we stopped all that. We're really better. We're different now. I mean, we're different than we were, the day before yesterday. And we have stopped these practices. So we've made all these improvements. So there's no reason to keep pushing on us, IRS, please. I think that was, I think he kind of admitted some of this by saying that they'd stopped doing.
In the March 31st, our resolve letter, he says, we've been bad, but we're fixing it. But we acknowledge we have a long way to go, but we've been bad. And then the letter comes in from the Trump administration on Friday last. And then on Monday, a week ago from yesterday, Harvard says, go away, and they throw down. And then yesterday, they sue. And so I think they've just adopted a PR strategy that's intended to make people like you and me look away. And I don't think they're going to get victim status in the United States in 2025. Do you?
No. What do you make of these reports, by the way, that the Trump administration letter to Harvard was sent as, quote, by mistake?
My response to that was, I don't care, because it went out. And once it goes out, it's an official statement by the Department of Education and two other agencies, and Harvard rejected it. So whether or not it was done by they dotted their I's and crossed their T's, doesn't matter to me. It's a demand letter, and Harvard said, well, you know what Harvard said. They said, screw off.
Yeah. Well, they haven't retracted the letter or everything.
No.
I guess this was part of the PR battle. The administration basically writes a long, angry letter to its girlfriend and then accidentally hits send and goes, oh, damn, I didn't mean to do that. But it doesn't matter. The letter has been received, and it has not been retracted.
And we're going to talk during the break. The great thing about that letter is it was 5 pages long, but it laid out 6 persuasive things, and Harvard said no to them all. Byron, yesterday I had on the one and the only Arthur Brooks. I love Arthur Brooks. I think he's a national treasure. He's up at Harvard now, at Harvard Business School. Says, Hugh, you love the university, and I do. Said, and John Manning is their provost. I didn't know that, but John Manning is their provost. He had been the dean of their law school. He was in the Reagan Department of Justice. He was the Office of Legal Counsel. He was in the SG's office. He's a very smart lawyer. I don't understand how anyone could give them this legal advice, or why we're referring to Robert Hur as a Trump-friendly lawyer simply because he didn't indict Joe Biden. Have you seen those stories?
Yes, I did see that. Well, I mean, Robert Hur was one of the co-authors of one of these "Don't Mess with Harvard" letters.
Yes,
he's a Harvard alum, and most of your listeners will know him as the special counsel who decided not to pursue Joe Biden for mishandling classified information, and then the process said that I believe Biden was an elderly man who
forgetful. Forgetful.
What was that again?
Forgetful, elderly old man.
Forgetful elderly man, and which was absolutely correct and kind of diplomatic. But Hur has been part of the sort of reflexive defense of Harvard. Just because he honestly portrayed Joe Biden doesn't mean he's going to be on your side or the other side of the Harvard matter.
He's on the side of $2,000 an hour, is on whose side he is. Who's ever going to hire King and Spalding is on whose side he is. He's a lawyer. But what I want to cut through the smoke, is anyone persuaded that Harvard hasn't done a bad thing here? I mean, does anyone believe that Harvard is being persecuted?
Well, to your first question, is anyone not persuaded by the idea that Harvard's done something bad? I think no. I think everybody kind of agrees about that, and I think that what's refreshing about the Trump letter, as in a lot of this administration so far, is that they've come out and done stuff that people have talked about for a long time, and And I'm sure you've complained about Harvard not just since October the 7th, but for a long time. And the Trump administration has actually done something about it.
Byron, I only go up every 5 years. I'm never invited, but I always go up every 5 years for a reunion. And it gets worse. I'm not going back. It just is so absolutely unhinged. Byron, I have one more question for you. I posed it to Brett Baer earlier. Harvard has gone off the rails. AOC raised $9.6 million. Chris Van Hollen is now the senator from El Salvador in MS-13. And California's fallen apart. Are the Democrat, Ro Khan is on every, I like Ro comes on this program. Are they going left? Are they absolutely going to do the McGovern thing in 72?
Well, there is a big debate that we've been talking about inside the Democratic Party, and we know there are some centrists who are kind of looking back to the Democratic to the DLC back in Bill Clinton years and saying the party needs to move to the center and attract some of those voters it lost in 2024. But on the other hand, there are always people who say we lost because we didn't go far enough. We weren't far left enough. And there's a significant number of people inside the Democratic Party who believe that. And they have all the energy now because those are the people who are saying resist, resist, resist. Every single thing, every single day of the Trump administration, resist. And that is what gets you the MSNBC viewers and the small contributors. There's a lot of people out there who believe that and who want to support that. And they don't want to hear what Rui Teixeira has to say. They don't want to hear what James Carville has to say. They don't want to hear.
And David Hogg is pretty good at this talking head stuff.
David Hogg is the guy there.
And
So there is a newer generation. And this is a generational change too, by the way. Obviously, Nancy Pelosi is 83, 84 years old, and she's probably
rounding down there, Byron.
Yeah, but anyway, the interesting thing is when you think, well, they lost because they went left. There are always people who say we lost because we didn't go left far enough.
And I think those people, I call them the ascendant left. They're having their moment. Byron York on X. Follow him in the Washington Examiner every day. See him on Fox News. Thank you, Byron. Byron York on X.